Jordan, joined by her father, a law enforcement officer from out of state, led investigators to a remote park nestled in the wooded outskirts of DeKalb County. Just 11 miles from the apartment where Alexis was last seen, the location felt worlds away from the energy and ambition of Clark Atlanta University, where Alexis had once pursued her dreams. The park, quiet and hidden from view, held a heavy stillness. It was there, on November 8th, exactly 1 week after Alexis had been reported missing, that authorities made a devastating discovery. Her remains were found, confirming the fears her family had hoped would never come true. The announcement sent shockwaves through her loved ones and the university community. A collective grief settling in as the reality took hold. Alexis's life, marked by promise and direction, had come to an end under heartbreaking and senseless circumstances. The void left in her absence was deep and lasting, for her family, her friends, and everyone who had believed in her future. Every crime has its own story, and we're here to tell it to you, our dear viewers. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay with us. Born in the spring of 1998 in Athens, Georgia, Alexis Crawford entered the world as part of a large, tight-knit, and deeply devout family. One of 10 siblings, Alexis grew up in a home that placed high value on faith, unity, and strong moral foundations. Her parents, committed to both their church and their children's futures, instilled in Alexis a powerful combination of discipline, purpose, and compassion from a very young age. Her upbringing was shaped by the rhythms of community service, the structure of a faith-based household, and a strong emphasis on education as a gateway to opportunity and self-betterment. In a household filled with energy and voices, Alexis stood out for her quiet determination. Even as a child, she was the kind of person who would observe more than she spoke, but when she did speak, her words carried weight. By the time she reached high school, Alexis had developed a reputation among her peers and educators as someone who was not only intelligent and dependable, but also profoundly thoughtful. Teachers consistently remembered her as the kind of student who asked insightful questions that went beyond what was expected in the classroom and revealed a mind eager to understand the complexities of the world around her. Alexis had a calm, steady presence, and while she wasn't the type to seek out the spotlight, her sense of inner confidence and respect for others naturally drew people to her. She carried herself with a quiet elegance, always respectful, always focused. She didn't compete with others for attention. Instead, she earned admiration through hard work, kindness, and an unwavering sense of justice. After completing high school, Alexis made the pivotal decision to pursue higher education at Clark Atlanta University, a well-respected historically Black institution located in the heart of Atlanta. Her choice of major, sociology and criminal justice, reflected her growing interest in understanding how society functions and how she might one day play a role in improving it. Friends and professors alike described her as someone with a strong ethical compass, deeply motivated by fairness and a desire to uplift others. There was little doubt in anyone's mind that Alexis was destined for a meaningful career in public service, perhaps even within law enforcement, following in the footsteps of her father, Bobby Crawford, who had built a career in that very field. Her academic journey was one defined by resilience, hard work, and a deeply held belief in the power of change. Alexis didn't just want to study the systems of justice, she wanted to help shape them. She saw her education not only as a path toward personal advancement, but as a tool for creating better outcomes for individuals and communities often left behind. By the fall of 2019, Alexis was a senior at Clark Atlanta University, just months away from graduation. The anticipation of completing her degree filled her with excitement and pride, both for herself and for her family, who had supported her every step of the way. Alexis's bond with her parents and her 9 siblings remained unbreakable. Her large family was her foundation, her constant source of encouragement, and her strength. Her friends described her as warm, loving, and full of humor, a young woman who, despite her seriousness when it came to her goals, knew how to laugh and bring light into the room. At that time, Alexis was living off campus in an apartment she shared with 21-year-old Jordan Jones. The two had been roommates for a while, and were, by many accounts, extremely close. Alexis even referred to Jordan as her best friend. The pair had developed a bond that extended beyond the typical roommate arrangement. Jordan was well acquainted with Alexis's family, and had shared holidays like Thanksgiving and Easter with them. Their relationship appeared from the outside to be one of trust and genuine friendship. It seemed like a perfect match, the kind of roommate story that gave everyone peace of mind. On the afternoon of October 30th, 2019, Alexis was in contact with her family. Around 3:30 p.m., she FaceTimed with her mother, Tammy, and one of her sisters, Monica. The conversation was lighthearted. Alexis was smiling, chatting, and joking. By all appearances, she was in good spirits. During the call, Alexis asked Monica to send her some money. With their father Bobby's approval, Monica later transferred the funds. It was an entirely ordinary exchange. Nothing about it raised any red flags. Later that evening, just before 9 p.m., another one of Alexis's sisters, Alexandria, texted her to see what her plans were. It was homecoming weekend at Clark Atlanta University, and the campus was buzzing with events and celebrations. Students were planning parties, get-togethers, and outings across the city. But Alexis didn't seem to be participating. Her reply was short and somewhat unexpected. Nothing. At 3:09 a.m., Alexis posted something to Instagram and responded to a message not long after that. Then, nothing. From that point forward, there were no more texts, no calls, no activity. The silence that followed was deeply out of character. By the following morning, the absence of Alexis Crawford was impossible to ignore. For those who knew her well, especially her family, the sudden silence was both jarring and deeply unsettling. Alexis had always been someone who maintained close daily contact with her loved ones. It wasn't unusual for her to send several messages throughout the day, or hop on a quick call just to check in. She was the kind of person who made sure others felt her presence, even from afar. But now, her phone calls went unanswered, and every attempt to reach her went straight to voicemail. It was completely out of character. As the hours passed with no word from Alexis, worry began to turn into a gnawing fear. Her absence stretched into the late afternoon and early evening without explanation. On November 1st, the situation became undeniably serious. Alexis failed to show up for her scheduled college classes, a routine she had never neglected. Even more troubling, she missed her shift at her part-time job, something that simply never happened. She was known for her reliability, her punctuality, and her deep sense of responsibility. Her family, friends, and even faculty members agreed. This wasn't like her. This wasn't who Alexis was. The unsettling reality began to sink in. Her family, now alarmed to the point of panic, took immediate action. They contacted local authorities and officially reported Alexis missing. In a matter of hours, the Atlanta Police Department confirmed that a formal missing person report had been filed. Alexis Crawford, a respected senior at Clark Atlanta University, and a beloved sister and daughter, had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Her brother, concerned and clearly shaken, told police that she had last been seen on the night of October 30th. In response, the university issued public statements urging anyone with information to come forward. Flyers were created and shared. Students and faculty began posting online. The case began drawing the attention of the wider Atlanta community. Investigators from the Atlanta Police Department initiated a full review of surveillance footage, hoping to piece together her final known movements. One of the last verifiable sightings of Alexis came from a security camera at the Heritage Station apartment complex where she lived. The timestamp placed her at the building late on the night of October 30th. According to her roommate, Jordan Jones, Alexis had asked for a ride to a nearby liquor store that evening. Jordan told police she drove Alexis to the store around 11:30 p.m., and footage later confirmed the visit. It showed Alexis entering the store, casually browsing before making a purchase. Nothing in her body language appeared out of the ordinary. She wasn't acting distressed, frightened, or hurried. Yet, despite this calm appearance, this video would later become one of the final images anyone would have of her. After Alexis's family last heard from her on the evening of October 30th, Jordan provided further insight into the night's events. She informed investigators that she saw Alexis again, roughly an hour after the FaceTime call Alexis had with her family. That brief interaction, she explained, was uneventful. Alexis seemed normal, giving no indication that anything was wrong. Jordan assumed, as usual, that Alexis would wind down for the night and head to sleep not long after. Nothing seemed out of place, at least not yet. But when Jordan woke up the following morning, Thursday, October 31st, she noticed something was amiss. The energy of the apartment felt different. It was quieter than usual, almost too quiet. The typical signs of movement, the sound of someone in the kitchen, the shuffling of books or clothes, were absent. Alexis was not in the living room, where she had recently begun sleeping. There were no signs of her having been there the night before. The blanket she typically used was neatly folded, untouched. No phone chargers, headphones, or familiar belongings lay scattered nearby. It was as if that space had been undisturbed for hours. Puzzled and increasingly concerned, Jordan started checking around the apartment. When she entered Alexis's bedroom, she found it equally empty. More notably, some of Alexis's personal essentials were missing: her cell phone, her ID card, and her debit card. At first glance, it might have seemed she had left voluntarily. After all, it was homecoming week, and the campus was buzzing with events. Perhaps she had stepped out to meet friends or attend a gathering, but something didn't feel right. Before leaving for class, Jordan noticed another strange detail. The front door was locked. That might not seem unusual in most circumstances, but in this case, it raised questions. If Alexis had gone out during the night or early morning hours, had she locked the door behind her? Did someone else do it? And if so, when? The clues were vague, the timeline murky. Police soon focused their investigation on the window of time between 11:30 p.m. on October 30th, the liquor store visit, and the early hours of Halloween morning. No one else reported seeing Alexis during this period. None of her friends had heard from her. She hadn't attended any campus parties or public gatherings. No social media posts were made, no photos uploaded, no messages sent. For someone who was typically so connected, her complete digital silence was startling. The hours turned into days. Concern evolved into fear, and fear began to harden into dread. As the investigation progressed, police made the decision to release still images from the liquor store's surveillance footage. They hoped someone, anyone, might recognize Alexis's clothing or remember encountering her that night. The photographs spread quickly online, showing Alexis appearing calm, focused, and unaware that she was being captured in what would become her final public images. The hashtag #Let'sFindLex began trending as support for her safe return grew across social media platforms. The online campaign galvanized thousands. Friends, classmates, strangers, and community members began organizing search parties. Volunteers scoured the area around Alexis's off-campus apartment, especially focusing on an overgrown, wooded area directly across the street. Flyers went up on street corners, convenience stores, and bus stops. The community came together with hope, but also with a growing sense of unease. This wasn't like Alexis. She had never been reported missing before. There was no activity on her phone, no transactions on her bank account. For someone as communicative and responsible as Alexis, this prolonged silence was deeply out of character. Her family, who knew her habits better than anyone, began to fear the worst. And yet, even as days passed, police maintained that they could not rule anything out. As standard procedure, investigators considered all possibilities, including the unlikely scenario that she may have voluntarily left for reasons unknown. Nearly a full week passed with no word from Alexis. In that time, her family remained in Atlanta, surrounded by loved ones and supported by the broader community. Her parents, siblings, cousins, and close friends gathered together, often in prayer circles, clinging to faith as they waited for updates. On campus, Clark Atlanta University held community gatherings and updates. Even the university president personally addressed students and faculty, saying the entire campus was heartbroken over the disappearance of one of their own. The president stood beside Chief Deborah Williams, head of the university's police department, as she promised the family that they would dedicate every possible resource to the case. The family had also just concluded a meeting with top officials in the Atlanta Police Department, who reaffirmed their role as the lead investigative agency. These officers gave the family their word. They would work tirelessly to uncover the truth. "We have great confidence in the law enforcement officers involved," a family member stated during a press conference. "We are trusting in their experience, their dedication, and their humanity. We know they will do everything they can to bring our daughter home." Meanwhile, officers were contacting hospitals, clinics, and shelters throughout the Atlanta area. They checked emergency rooms and intake centers, even asking whether any Jane Doe cases had been admitted. They combed through every possibility. Then, a new piece of information surfaced. One that brought the investigation right back to the apartment Alexis had shared with Jordan Jones. At a press briefing, the family's spokesperson, Reverend Mark Al Hutchin, spoke carefully and compassionately about Alexis's recent emotional state. She had gone through something difficult, something no woman should ever have to face, he said. He called for the city of Atlanta to offer their prayers and support, not only in finding Alexis but also in recognizing the strength it takes to recover from trauma. Until then, this statement had been vague, left open to interpretation. But soon it was revealed that on October 27th, just 3 days before her disappearance, Alexis had gone to the hospital and filed a report with the police. The report named someone close to her roommate, Barron Brantley, Jordan's boyfriend. According to the official documents, Alexis had been at her apartment with Jordan and Barron. The three were spending time together and had shared a few drinks. During that evening, Barron allegedly made an advance toward Alexis, which she firmly rejected. Barron reportedly claimed he had mistaken her for Jordan, but Alexis, clearly upset by the encounter, withdrew to her bedroom. Shortly afterward, she moved into the bathroom alone and closed the door. What happened next is still not entirely clear. Alexis told authorities that she didn't recall anything that occurred after entering the bathroom, only that she woke up later, confused and shaken. Jordan, meanwhile, had been banging on the bathroom door during the incident. When Barron finally opened it, she later described his demeanor as visibly shaken. He appeared nervous, unsure. By 6 a.m., Barron had left the apartment, taking Jordan's car without permission. Jordan then called 911, but not to report the incident involving Alexis. Instead, she reported her car missing. Despite the deeply troubling events of late October, including the report Alexis Crawford filed against Barron Brantley, little mention was made publicly about the incident. In fact, when speaking with authorities later, Jordan Jones referred to Barron as her ex-boyfriend, a statement that raised eyebrows. It directly contradicted what others had consistently observed and understood about their relationship, that the two were still together at the time Alexis went missing. This contradiction would later become one of many small but significant red flags. After the incident on October 27th, Alexis took the courageous and difficult step of going to Grady Memorial Hospital, where she underwent an examination and submitted evidence. The resulting report linked Barron Brantley directly to the case. During this time, while Alexis was attempting to process what had happened and place her trust in the system to protect her, Jordan secretly allowed Barron back into their shared apartment. Despite knowing the distress Alexis was under, Barron was kept hidden in Jordan's room, staying there for several days without Alexis's knowledge. Alexis, meanwhile, had become so uncomfortable in her own space that she stopped sleeping in her bedroom altogether. She confided in friends that she no longer felt safe and had chosen to sleep in the living area to put distance between herself and the environment that had become a source of fear. What she didn't know, heartbreakingly, was that Barron had not left. He was still in the apartment. When police investigators returned to speak with Jordan and Barron following Alexis's disappearance, the story began to unravel. Jordan admitted that tensions had arisen between her and Alexis. She stated that they were no longer speaking to each other and had stopped communicating in the days following the October 27th report. But this response only sparked more questions. Investigators pressed for answers, and as they dug deeper, inconsistencies piled up. Eventually, in a development that stunned even seasoned detectives, Jordan, accompanied by her father, who worked in law enforcement in another state, led authorities to a remote park. The location, roughly 11 miles from the apartment, was a quiet, wooded area in DeKalb County, a place not far in distance, but far removed in spirit from the lively campus where Alexis had once walked with ambition and optimism. On November 8th, 1 week after Alexis had been reported missing, authorities recovered her in that DeKalb park. The confirmation devastated her family, friends, and the entire Clark Atlanta University community. Alexis's life, a promising future in public service, a strong moral compass, a heart rooted in compassion, had come to a tragic and senseless end. Shortly afterward, the Atlanta Police Department announced formal charges against two suspects, Jordan Jones and Barron Brantley. The charges included premeditated murder. The announcement rocked the campus and the greater Atlanta area. Students were reeling, not just from the heartbreaking loss of Alexis, but also from the chilling realization that those responsible were not strangers. They were fellow students, well-known, even well-liked, among peers. It was a betrayal that cut deep. Student government president Levin Campbell described the emotional atmosphere across the university as heavy and somber. "First, we lost Alexis, and that alone was painful," he said. "But to learn that the people involved were part of our own campus family, that has shaken everyone to their core. People are trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense." In response, the university president issued a formal open letter, expressing profound sorrow and reaffirming the institution's commitment to support. On-campus grief counselors were made available to any students, faculty, or staff who needed to talk. Vigils were held. Students gathered in prayer, lit candles, and shared stories about Alexis, the intelligent, thoughtful, driven young woman whose presence had left a mark on so many. As the investigation progressed, more disturbing information surfaced. Surveillance footage from the apartment complex's parking garage showed Jordan and Barron pulling up in Jordan's car around 3 a.m. Police believe this is the time the two transported Alexis. Afterward, they returned to the apartment and went to sleep, continuing their day as if nothing had happened. Later that same morning, Jordan sent a text to another friend, asking her to replace the trash bin at the apartment. Then, shockingly, Jordan and Barron attended a Halloween party, posing for photos and mingling with others, appearing by all accounts carefree and unaffected. Detectives eventually concluded that both Jordan and Barron had willingly participated in the crime and in the efforts to cover it up. Jordan went so far as to turn off Alexis's phone, but she continued to send text messages to it, likely to create the illusion that she was trying to find her missing friend. She even posted a message on Instagram about Alexis's disappearance, stating, "This is obviously a difficult time for me, and I just feel helpless. My heart is really hurting right now." But investigators noted the lack of remorse. Despite the message, both suspects carried on with their lives, pretending nothing was wrong. Behind the scenes, forensic investigators were conducting a thorough search of the apartment. When they sprayed luminol, a chemical that reveals traces of biological material, they discovered evidence in at least 6 separate areas of the living room. Clear signs that an attempted cleanup had taken place. The motive behind the crime has never been definitively confirmed by police. While the complaint Alexis filed on October 27th is seen as a potential catalyst, investigators have been cautious. They stated publicly that while it was a factor in the timeline, they could not say conclusively that it was the motive for what followed. Still, the timing of the report, coming just 3 days before Alexis vanished, remains an important part of the story, and one that cannot be ignored. On November 16th, a somber chapter came to a close as Alexis Crawford's funeral service was held in Atlanta. What should have been another day in the life of a thriving young woman had instead become a heartbreaking farewell to a life cut far too short. The service, meticulously planned by her grieving family, drew an overwhelming number of mourners. The church was filled with friends, classmates, extended family members, Clark Atlanta University faculty, and even strangers moved by her story. For those unable to be physically present, the ceremony was live-streamed, allowing people from all over the country to join in honoring the vibrant soul whose loss had shaken the entire community. The atmosphere inside the sanctuary was heavy with sorrow, but also filled with love. The sound of quiet weeping mixed with the gentle hum of gospel hymns as photographs of Alexis, laughing, smiling, full of life, were displayed across large monitors. Many who attended wore university colors or ribbons pinned to their clothing in her memory. Teachers from her high school, mentors from her university, and neighbors from her childhood all came together in shared grief. During the service, Alexis's father took the podium to deliver a eulogy that left nearly no dry eyes in the room. His words were measured, but his pain was palpable. Though devastated, he spoke with the unwavering strength of a parent who had lost something irreplaceable. "If they wanted to take someone's life, they could have taken mine," he said, his voice trembling but firm. They didn't have to take my baby." His words echoed through the sanctuary, and well beyond it, shared across social media, replayed in news segments, and discussed in classrooms and living rooms. His heartbreak became a symbol of the deeper tragedy that this case represented: the violation of trust, the loss of promise, and the senseless nature of the crime. That moment encapsulated the grief of a family, the shock of a city, and the anguish felt by many who had followed Alexis's story from the beginning. As the days turned into weeks, the legal side of the case began to unfold. Following an extensive investigation by the Atlanta Police Department, both Jordan Jones and Barron Brantley were formally indicted by a Fulton County grand jury. The charges against them were not only serious, they were extensive. The pair faced 6 criminal counts, including felony murder, false imprisonment, and concealing the death of another person. These charges painted a deeply troubling picture of what may have happened in Alexis's final hours. When the two appeared in court for arraignment, both pleaded not guilty, setting in motion what would become a complex and closely watched legal battle. The courtroom was filled with reporters, legal analysts, and members of the public, all hoping to better understand how such a heartbreaking event could have occurred. Though the legal process was only just beginning, the emotional weight of Alexis Crawford's death was already reverberating through the halls of justice. As pretrial motions began to surface, prosecutors and defense attorneys entered a legal tug-of-war over the details. Both Jones and Brantley remained in custody at the Fulton County Jail, though Jordan's legal team moved quickly to file a motion for bond. Her attorneys argued that their client, who had been Alexis's roommate and once considered a close friend, was not a danger to the public and should be allowed to await trial outside of jail. They emphasized that Jordan had no prior felony convictions and had ties to the community. They also claimed she had shown some cooperation during the early stages of the investigation. But as the court prepared to consider her request for bond, disturbing new details began to emerge. Prosecutors countered the defense's narrative with evidence that complicated Jordan's position significantly. First, they pointed to digital communications allegedly showing Jordan attempting to persuade Brantley to delete surveillance footage from the apartment complex. Footage that could have been critical to understanding the events leading to Alexis's disappearance. This action, they argued, was a clear effort to obstruct justice and protect a co-defendant, not the behavior of someone seeking transparency. During the virtual bond hearing, Alexis's parents appeared once again, this time offering emotional statements directly to the court. Her mother spoke through tears, her voice cracking under the weight of grief. "My daughter didn't deserve this," she said. "She was kind, smart, and full of dreams. This loss has changed everything." Her father also addressed the court, his words echoing the pain he had shared at the funeral. He implored the judge not to release someone he believed had shown no remorse and had betrayed the trust of their family in the most profound way. The emotional gravity of their testimony weighed heavily on the judge, the court, and all who were present for the hearing. Prosecutors pushed back hard against Jordan's request for bond. They revealed evidence of social media messages that showed Jordan allegedly encouraging Barron to delete or destroy surveillance video from the apartment complex, potentially obstructing justice. In addition, it came to light that Jordan had been on probation for a prior DUI, a detail her defense team did not initially emphasize. Even more damaging to her case, prosecutors stated that Jordan had contacted witnesses, misled Alexis's family, and attempted to manipulate the narrative. One such incident involved her telling family members that no DNA had been found, a claim proven to be untrue, as forensic evidence had directly linked Barron to the scene. Her defense attorney attempted to reframe her behavior as emotional support following a difficult time. But with the knowledge that she had allowed Barron back into the apartment after Alexis's police report, many felt this version of events lacked credibility. As the case unfolded, the two accused individuals began to distance themselves from one another. Both Jordan and Barron, through their respective attorneys, requested that their trials be severed, a legal strategy that would allow them to be tried separately, each hoping to avoid being implicated by the other's actions or testimony. The court agreed to consider this motion, which added further complexity and delays to an already drawn-out legal process. Court proceedings were further slowed by logistical delays, including court backlogs, the pandemic-era lockdowns, and procedural hearings. Then, in 2023, Another significant blow landed for the prosecution and the Crawford family. During a critical pretrial hearing, it was determined that Baron Brantley's confession could not be used as evidence in court. The judge ruled that there was a significant likelihood that Baron had been under the influence of an undisclosed substance at the time of his confession. Though detectives testified that Baron spoke of his own free will, and that his statements aligned closely with Jordan's version of events, the court concluded there wasn't enough assurance that his confession hadn't been compromised by his state of mind. This ruling was a major setback for prosecutors who had relied on the consistency between the two accounts as a cornerstone of their case. Not long after, another development took many by surprise. The court announced it was considering allowing Baron to apply for bail, something that deeply shocked Alexis's family and sparked widespread concern from the public. The notion that either of the two individuals accused in such a devastating case could potentially be released pending trial was met with confusion and anguish from supporters of the Crawford family and justice advocates alike. As of March 2023, more than 3 years after Alexis was reported missing, there were still no confirmed trial dates set for either Brantley or Jones. The wheels of justice were turning, but slowly, and not without friction. Delays related to evidence admissibility, motions to separate trials, and new legal filings continued to cloud the timeline. The extended wait weighed heavily on Alexis's family, who had already endured more than anyone should. By May 2025, the situation remained in limbo. Both Jordan Jones and Baron Brantley remained in custody without bail, with the charges against them still pending final resolution. However, the Georgia Supreme Court introduced a new and potentially pivotal element to the case. It ruled that recorded jail phone calls made by Brantley could be used as admissible evidence in court. The content of these phone calls had not yet been made public, but their approval as evidence represented a potential turning point in the case. Legal experts have noted that recorded jail conversations, which are routinely monitored, often contain information that can provide insight into a suspect's mindset, relationships, or post-crime behavior. If these recordings contain inconsistencies with public statements or confessions made previously, they could become crucial in establishing motive, intent, or corroboration between the two accused parties.